Right, I'm going to call the Thursday, May 4th work session of Narberth Borough Council to order. Borough, will you call the roll?
Sure, President Bush.
Here.
Vice President Pananopoulos.
Here.
Member Borough.
Here.
Member Bordner.
Here.
Member McGreevy. Here. Member Rickards.
Here.
Member Winston. Here. And Mayor Deutsch.
Here.
All right, are there any changes or additions to the agenda? Okay, I have no comment for today. Ms. Mary, your comments?
Not a lot, except to just remind folks, we have a lot going on in the borough this weekend. It's First Friday on tomorrow, and there's the beginning of NARP Art Month in the borough. So you'll see some public art in our windows of our downtown and public spaces. So volunteers have worked hard to really make things look nice and take some time and look around the borough and enjoy their efforts. Also on Saturday, we have Narber Earth Day from 12 to 4 in the park. So a lot of volunteers are going to be there to show you how to take good care of Mother Earth. And so I would invite everybody to go down and enjoy and see what they have to do. And I want to thank all the volunteers for working so hard to make a very nice weekend. I think we have Boy Scouts here today. Yeah, I want to thank you for coming to our meeting and seeing what civic duty and public service is all about. So thank you for taking the time to come to the meeting. And that's it.
All right. And yeah, I'll offer my welcome as well. Thanks for joining. Let's move on to public comment. So as a reminder, public comment is limited to 3 minutes. Please begin by saying your name and your address, and then I'll start the timer. And we can begin with folks in the room. Start over here in the first row or the front row. Like it's the second row. Going back, anybody wish to make public comment? I'm sorry,
John Constantine, 400 Narberth Avenue. Here to speak about the park. Would request that you put your request for proposal off a little bit more until you can have a discussion more with the public. I don't know if you reach out to anybody on Narberth Avenue, Wayne Avenue, Price Avenue, North Essex Avenue. I don't think you're getting accurate input. There's a silent majority out there that is really opposed to any building at all. And you also have 650 Montgomery Avenue. There's a project right now, which Wonder Springs could probably get a head start with negotiating for, space in there if that's really necessary. So have you reached out to anybody in the north section that borders the park?
Not typically a Q&A, so we will discuss when we come to the agenda item in the RFP. Is there anything else you want to add?
No.
Thank you. Anyone else in the room? All right, let's move on to people who are on Zoom.
If you're on Zoom and like to make a comment, just raise your hand. Okay, I think we're good.
All right. Seeing no comments online. Green is not. Okay. All right. Let's close public comments and move on to our presentation items. 7A, bridge project updates.
Jen and I talked about her trying to take the lead. If it's doable, if not, I certainly can. I will say that she and I have met with Alan, we've met ourselves, just that we're presenting the same stuff. So, Jen, are you able to?
Yes, we'll find out. Can you guys hear me okay? Are you able to hear me or no? Okay, sorry, I was having a little bit of technical difficulties here. So it sounds like you guys can hear me okay. Sorry, the picture in the corner is like this big that I can see. So bear with me. As Jim said, we have met with Alan a couple of times and are on the same page. And one of the main goals that we want out of the meeting today, which we do appreciate you having us come and present about the project and give an update, is to discuss where we are with the PICO aerial lines that are existing on the bridge and how we need to incorporate them or move them in some way to keep the bridge project moving forward. So I know Samantha has kept you guys up to date throughout our meetings that we've had with her and now with Alan every 2 weeks over the last couple of months since our last time at being at council. So in order to get through to that goal, we just wanted to give you an update. I know you have the schedule in front of you and it's on the screen. We have progressed our design forward with Amtrak, which was one of our sticking points, so to speak, back in January. We've gotten their comments back. We've resubmitted and addressed their comments. And it's now back into Amtrak for approval. We don't anticipate any further comments, which is a good sign. We've also progressed forward with PennDOT and our final design comments that we've gotten from PennDOT's bridge unit. We've resolved one of the bigger comments there to remove the interior barrier, and we've worked through the details with Samantha with PennDOT and with the architect that's on board. And then we've gotten to PICO, and PICO has basically rescinded its decision to remain aerial, which was made back in 2017. As part of the utility clearance process for all PennDOT projects, which is considered, there is a lot of paperwork that we kind of go through and these steps that are very routine in PennDOT's world. And we went through those and we got close to the end in 2017. But since so much time has kind of passed, we've decided to reach back out to the utility companies, which is typical, and just make sure nothing new has come up, nothing has changed. Obviously, you know, there's been utility projects in the borough since 2017. Just wanted to make sure we have everything documented as it is today. In that process is when PICO kind of came back and said that they would actually like to be on the bridge rather than remain aerial. And we've done a bit of back and forth with them and some digging on both ends to find some solutions that would work, some feasible solutions that would work to satisfy both PennDOT and PICO and the borough, and also meet all the standards that are needed. So what it comes down to, excuse me, is that we've got aerial lines that go across the bridge on the east side now. PICO currently does not have any kind of aerial easement agreement with Amtrak. So if we move those poles, which we have to do because the new bridge is going to be taking some of the spot, or it's going to be in the way, the poles are going to be in the way of the new bridge. They then have to get an aerial agreement with Amtrak. And then go, excuse me, they have to get an aerial agreement from Amtrak to move the poles and then remain aerial. And we also have to raise the lines at this point because the clearances are too tight vertically with the new bridge. The other option is to then move the Pico lines from aerial onto the bridge and basically carry them on the bridge like we're doing with the gas line. But this would actually be underneath in between the girders. We've looked at both of those options and kind of talked through a lot of them, looked at the cost, looked at the schedule impacts, totally understand that the schedule is the more driving factor here in making the decision, or at least that's how we've been looking at it, and wanted to provide our recommendation based on that information to you guys and see what the borough, what the council either agrees or disagrees with on that. So with those two options, basically to remain aerial, we've looked at how long that will take to get our utility clearance, which is basically the approval from PICO, the agreement that we have with PICO and PennDOT signing off on all of that. That'll take about another 12 to 18 months because of getting that easement agreement with Amtrak, which we know is not ideal in any situation. That option also costs about another $50,000 in order to get all the coordination down and to get the agreement in place. If we were to move on to the bridge, it would take about 6 months to get the utility clearance agreement in place, which is about a half to a third of the time of the remaining aerial option, but it would cost about $100,000 to do so, which is a little bit more. Keep in mind with the costs, there is an agreement between the borough and PennDOT where there is an 80-15-5 split. So 80% federal, 15% state, and 5% is paid by the borough. So 5% of those costs are what come from the borough. We would like to add to that we have been in discussions with PICO about trying to get PICO to reimburse the borough for the design costs because they've come in so late into the game and made this decision that is possible. So we have an example agreement from another project that PennDOT has done in a similar manner and could go back and negotiate with PICO to try to get some of that money reimbursed from them so that the borough wouldn't have to foot the bill. So I know that was a lot of information that was just thrown at you guys, but wanted to paint the big picture here. So I know Jim's there in case there's any questions that anyone has regarding any of that.
So my understanding is Jen still can't hear us. So I just texted her, why don't you let me do the Q&A?
Okay.
Well, so the one thing I'm a little bit confused about, maybe you could clarify, is let's say PICO had no interest in being on the bridge; they wanted to do it aerially. Why are we just discovering now that actually that wouldn't have worked? I mean, it would require a whole redesign and all these clearances.
That is a great question. The reason we didn't discover it till now is because they said they wanted to remain aerial, and PennDOT and the borough were fine with that. Right.
No, but you said if we wanted to remain aerial, they would still have to.
To be clear, they can't remain aerial without getting an agreement with Amtrak. We didn't know they didn't have an agreement with Amtrak. Why would we know that? If they were to remain aerial, they would want to move off of the right of way for the bridge closer to the Amtrak part, to the SEPTA parking lot. But they would need to get their own agreement with Amtrak. And that's the schedule impact. We know agreements with Amtrak take a long time. When we met with them initially and they said they wanted to keep the line just where it is, we didn't know. They didn't have an agreement with Amtrak in place. So the options are, I believe they believe their options are they remain aerial. They'd want to do it slightly somewhere else, but would need an agreement with Amtrak, or they attach to the bridge where they would meet an agreement with you. And obviously an agreement with you would be a lot faster.
Right. It's just that, like, we are not experts at like building bridges and running utility lines over them. We hired you to be that expert.
Yeah.
And so now we're in the situation where we're going to lose another 6 months and $100,000.
So about that, right? There's a very, I guess all transportation projects, right, have utilities, right? There's a very prescribed process that we are experts in and go through. We communicate with the utility. They tell us what their plan is and what they intend to do. We believe them, and then we move forward. When they come back in later and say that just wasn't the case, then, you know, we're in a tough spot. So we can know the process. We know how to design a bridge. We know how to move utilities if they need to move. But when we're told one thing and it's just not the case, I don't know how we prevent that. Did that answer your question?
Well, yeah, I mean, I'm not like thrilled with the answer, of course.
No, nor
but you did. But you did answer.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay.
Just a quick clarification. Is it the case that, because I've heard, it sounded like maybe you and both Jen both suggested, but I may have misunderstood, that PICO would like to move the line, like it would be a better solution if they remained aerial, or is it that if they remain aerial, they must move the line for an engineering or reason?
I'm not sure exactly if they need to move it or not, but either way, they don't have an agreement with Amtrak. So staying aerial requires getting an agreement with Amtrak. So I'm not sure why they want to move the line, but given that they already have to get the agreement with Amtrak.
They're aerial now, though, right?
They're aerial now.
So how is there, does anybody like asked if there's like an implied easement or something? I mean, they've been aerial over Amtrak's right away for a long time.
Yeah.
Has anybody looked into that?
Whether there's an implied easement.
Any kind of implied easement, or, you know, I mean, sometimes you get an easement from use over time, like, you know, is it, I don't know, I think that's a law question, but I'm just, has anybody asked that question?
Don't believe we've asked that question.
Do you think it's worth asking?
Sure.
People get asked their in-house, you know, lawyers if that's, you know, a reasonable thing to
Jim, can I step in? Because I'm starting to hear you guys like a little bit here, and I heard the question. PICO has internally dug through their records and dug into, you know, whether they have an agreement currently or any kind of implied agreement. They cannot find any from what their real estate folks are telling them, which is why they're saying that no matter what happens, they would need an agreement if they stay aerial. If they become attached to the bridge, like Jim said, that agreement is now between PICO and the borough, basically, not necessarily Amtrak, because the bridge itself already has the easement across Amtrak. Does that answer the question?
No, but thank you.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
It's whether or not a use of that long-standing use over time without Amtrak objecting and Amtrak permitting it can sometimes create a right. And I'm just wondering if PICO's or anybody has actually looked into whether that's possible in the utility context.
We will confirm, but I unfortunately think the answer is probably not.
And if it has to move, if they say it has to move, it's going to stay aerial. Then
That's one way. That was my first question.
Okay.
It sounded like it may or may not happen, but I don't know. We didn't get a like versus half.
All right, so Andrew.
My question was answered.
Okay, go ahead, Cindy.
So I guess my question really revisits yours, Ira, and yours. You're saying you are not the person that should be asking these questions because you build bridges. Ira was very clear. None of us are bridge experts. Who then is the person on this project? Because I thought it was you and Jen to say, okay, here's the checklist of questions to ask. Because I don't even know what questions to ask. So if it's not you and Jen at Pannoni, who is it?
So if I can clarify, it is me and Jen. We did ask. They gave us the answer, and we moved forward with that answer. They then came back and said that answer was wrong. So when I say we're in a tough position, we ask, we get the information, we act on information, and then they rescind what they told us. That puts us in a very difficult spot. So we are the people to ask, and it's a very prescribed method for doing so through the PennDOT process. And we just had that information.
So do we have any legal recourse then, that you're saying you've asked the question and they?
Well, you said they're asking if PICO will pay for this. So
I think it's more than paying the 5% at this point that you're saying. But it's the delay, right? So the 5, whatever that math is for the borough is actually not enough. If you're saying that they gave you incorrect information when you asked them, do you have the proper and required easements, and PICO didn't tell you the correct information, then the 5% is not enough from my perspective.
Mm-hmm.
I want payment for the time, for the Instagram page of the bridge closed, for example. Like, I would like 6 months of pain and suffering.
Well, that's the harm to the business.
Absolutely, and the harm to the businesses, and absolutely, that's not enough. If you're telling me you asked the question, that they gave you incorrect information, then I would like to explore what our legal recourse is.
Can you clarify where in the discussion you guys are with PICO in terms of reimbursing that 5%? Like you said, they may be able to, or they may not be able to, or they may do part of it.
Yeah, we do have an example from PennDOT where that has happened, and we've brought it up, but we've not insisted on it. We've not thought about it yet, but we brought it up. So it's not very far along, I would say.
I mean, to Cindy's point, because it was a failure on PICO's part, it seems like something that they should be responsible for at the very least.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, I think the issue here is, not like a few dollars either way to pay for the redesign, but are they going to meet this new schedule?
Mm-hmm.
Like, I don't want to get into a big fight about them over $5,000, and then have that delay the bridge another year. So, what kind of commitment can we get that this stay on track? That's the penalty. I don't want, because you say 6 months, but I don't know that it's 6 months.
Right.
So that's what we need is some kind of guarantee that they will expedite this and move it along and keep us going here, because we can't change what happened. We can fight about the money later,
Mm-hmm.
but we need to move the project along now.
So that we discussed that internally, and it's a borough decision, but the idea of keeping it on schedule and moving it along more is in your control if we agree to have PICO on the borough's bridge.
Yeah, we get that. I'm saying it's let's say we agree to that. Let's just for a moment assume we agree to that. How can we make sure that they meet that schedule? See, because there's no track record in this project of the schedule being met. So I'm not, sure, I would love to have the bridge done already, but now I've got this new schedule, I got this new set of facts. It needs to be done on this new schedule. We've said this a lot of times, but now, we mean business because it's just gone on for too long. And I don't want to sit here and fight over a couple of $1,000 and hold up the project. So how do I know that we're going to make good on this new schedule?
I cannot speak for PICO, but what I can do is what I did last time I was here is that I assured you that Benoni was working together with Sam to hassle Amtrak to get what we needed from them. And I can assure you that we'll work with Alan to hassle PICO to get what we need to finish the project. Now, can I make PICO do what PICO needs to do? Not really, but we do have PennDOT involved in this project. They do have thousands of miles of facilities in PennDOT right of way. We have partners here who help to keep it moving. But ultimately, PICO needs to do what PICO needs to do. We can keep hassling them with you and with PennDOT to make that happen.
But I'd rather see them like expedite that process than like, like pay for pay for a little extra redesign. Okay. That's what I'm saying is like, how can we get their attention so that they like, this becomes like, they feel bad that they messed this up and they proceed, without putting this at the back of the list.
Yeah, well, I think we do have their attention. We've met in the field twice in the last month to get through them making a decision. I think we have their attention. So, but
yeah, so let's just assume that, that this is what happens is option 2. And so PICO needs to get an easement agreement with and from Amtrak, which I'm sure you said would take 6 months. Is there anything else then? Like once they get their easement agreement, then are there a new set, or like, for example, we need to draw, looks like we need to draw new designs that show the utilities running on the bridge. Does this kick us back to like a new set of every single agency, however many there are, and department needs to now approve this?
Yeah, PennDOT does need to. So we do need to go through some steps again with PennDOT.
So
specifically,
is that the 6 months is anticipating getting all of those steps done in 6 months?
Yes.
So because PennDOT still needs to approve this, and they're, I take it that we couldn't start, but like putting the project out for bids now and sort of move on parallel paths. Say, well, they're going to get this easement, so we can at least, but we can't. Because we need PennDOT's.
Yeah, the bidding is going through the PennDOT process, right? So we're going to modify the bridge to take the PICO line. PennDOT needs to approve that, and PennDOT won't bid it until they've approved the bridge design. So that's the time. That's the time that we can expedite as fast as we can. PennDOT knows the project and has been engaged with us in expediting it since we met here in September. It's the other option where it's out of our hands that we can't expedite PICO and the Amtrak getting the agreement.
I mean, I'm most concerned with the bottom line dates, and they have slipped basically every 2 or 3 months. There have been different reasons that the dates have slipped, but I think it's been 4 or 5 different things that have come up. So I look at the dates that you've got on paper, and I don't feel like I have any confidence in these timelines. I mean, you list a specific date. You don't list like a range. You don't say, well, we expect that the project will go off in this range. You have a date. When I see a date, I mean, I expect that to be your best guess, and what's more, a fairly accurate guess. But when it's slipped 4 or 5 times, in the last couple of years, the project is now about as far from its lead date as it was 3 years ago. I mean, we're not getting any closer to that lead date. So I find this very frustrating. I don't know that is it that you're not very confident in these dates and you don't really express that in the way it's listed, that you feel like, well, we have to list a date, so we'll put it down even though you're really thinking it's going to be somewhere in this year? I mean, yeah. So what went wrong here? No, listen.
When we met in September or August, I forget when it was, we had to schedule with dates, right? And there were a lot of moving parts that went into that. So when we met again in January, we ticked off like our assumptions on this approval and this approval and this approval and this approval happened. Amtrak, we assumed 6 weeks to respond. We're on week, that time it was like 12. We don't have a response yet. So, we have assumptions built into the schedule that I think are reasonable assumptions. Thought it was unreasonable that it took 12 weeks to get a response, but so that was not in our schedule.
packet page.
So can I ask about, so what do you do? So Amtrak doesn't respond. It's been 3 months. Do you certify a letter? Do you call them, like, or are you just waiting for Amtrak sending reminders for follow-up? Like what recourse do we have then to
We had a
assure?
lot of discussions about that with Samantha. Like, what do we do and when? So Samantha pointed out that Senator Casey was involved in the initial kickoff of this project, that at some point when we are not getting enough of a response, we would go more political to get more of a response.
Sounds like we're there.
However, the risk of that is, frankly, Amtrak's review was pretty mild. If a senator comes down and starts hammering them, their review could be different. So that's the risk we were weighing all along. We ended up getting a response, and we responded to that quickly because it wasn't that difficult a review to get through. So that's what we were weighing constantly. We have bi-weekly meetings with the borough to just have those discussions. What are we going to do next? Ego, I don't know. I don't know the political relationships as well. That can be a discussion we have if it gets to that point.
If they don't respond,
Well, you know, I love when PICO comes to have our small businesses join them and really share what the experience and what the economic hardship is. Or maybe have our police come and share with the travel time it puts on getting to folks who need our emergency services with that bridge, and let them see the faces of the people in our community that they continue to like. If we don't want to hit the nuclear, political button, then, let's have them explain why it takes them 12 months or 12 weeks to enter an email to our community stakeholders. I'd really like to be, when they're next time they're on site, I'd suggest that we consider organizing our community. Because this isn't working, that's for sure.
I mean, if they give us a meeting date that's soon, if we approve this and they give us a rapid meeting date, I think we can let the process work. But I mean, I'm concerned because we get community members who say, yeah, when are you going to put the bridge out to bid? And if we tell them, well, we have an anticipated date and then that date doesn't hit, I mean, it's on us as council. What are we going to tell them, Mark? How do we respond when someone asks, when is this project going to be put out today? What would you recommend that we tell people?
Yeah, there's a reason I'm not elected. You're in a very difficult position, and I understand that. I do understand that. We understand we are in the service industry serving you, trying to give you the best information we can. And that's why we implemented the meetings with the borough every 2 weeks to try to keep the information flowing. Even when it's not an answer you want to hear, like, better to have the information. So all I can say is we will continue to meet with Alan every other week or more. When any issue comes up, we're in touch. And that was my pledge that, Jen is the project manager, but it was my pledge to stay on top of this project for Canoni and stay in communication with the borough, make sure that you have all the latest information and the latest decision points and where things stand. But yes, I appreciate that you're in a very difficult position.
So just to nail down it concretely, right? Like, suppose we said, yeah, okay, let's quickly get an agreement to get to say, yeah, we agree to put the power lines on the bridge. The next step is, the next step is that Canoni designs it, does the engineering, or is there another step before that? And I'm going to ask you, for all the steps up to the date when it's approved, because I'd like to know how many hoops need to be jumped through, in concrete terms. Again, at the end of the line, there's PennDOT, but what else stands between us and PennDOT approval?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, there's an awful lot of steps, right? But depending on how granular you want to get, generally we strike this new agreement, PennDOT agrees with it. Pannoni does our pieces of the design, Pico does their pieces of the design, submit them to PennDOT, that approves them. We get an entire set of approved plans. Meanwhile, we've resubmitted the Amtrak plans based on their comments. We get their approval, and then we bid the project, right? So
Wait, what's the Amtrak plans? We're starting over.
no, we're not starting over.
Okay, would you redraw their plans too?
No, we don't need to redraw their plans.
The Amtrak.
Yeah, when I was here in January, we could not get comments from Amtrak at that point. We have gotten comments, we have addressed them. They are in Amtrak's hands. So we still need their final approval. Right, so there's still milestones that need to happen. But as far as the PICO goes, we need the agreement, we need some redesign, we need PennDOT approval, and then we're ready to go. Jen, correct me if I'm wrong.
Except for Amtrak comments.
Well, then there's other things, right? Like Amtrak. We still.
All right, thanks everyone for their patience. We will reconvene the meeting. Question.
I do have a question. There's obviously a lot of frustration going on with what's going on. It just, the deadlines just keep extending, as everybody has said. Is there any way to escalate this matter over at PICO to someone who can take direct charge of it and make sure that this goes smoother and faster?
I imagine there is. I'm happy to ask PennDOT, who deals with PICO more than anyone else in the state, if they have a recommendation as to how to do that.
Just because this has been such a long process and we have been so patient and we're getting, you know, as you've heard, we get a lot of pushback from the community who's really upset with it and just feeling frustrated because this is taking now years. I wonder if there's a way to escalate this matter at PICO to make sure we get some undivided special attention and expedited attention.
Happy to have that conversation with the utility unit at PennDOT, see what they recommend.
Go ahead.
What is the PUC's involvement in the project? Are they involved at all? And do they have influence?
Yes, they're involved and have influence. Basically, railroad crossings are approved by the PUC. Utilities, are involved with the PUC.
Has there been any recent conversations with the PUC regarding this delay?
I don't know if there's been recent conversations with the PUC.
And they're their own approval. We have to get approval through them, completely separate of anything else that's going on. So, which is a problem when you were meeting because of the pandemic. All right. So to move this forward, I think that everybody on council agrees that option number 2, expediting the process, even though it's going to be an extra $2,500 to the borough, is the correct solution here. What do we need to do to move that forward?
Well, we have a draft agreement in front of PennDOT. They have comments, but they wanted to see where the borough stood, since it's a borough-driven project. If that's the case, we'll report back to PennDOT. The borough wants to do this option, and we'll keep that all moving with Alan, of course, to make sure the borough is on board every step of the way.
Does anybody object to that plan?
No, it's just that if it's going to take them 12 months to do that, we wouldn't want to do it that way. So part of that agreement should be that they expedite it. They're basically getting what they wanted, right? Which is the line on the bridge, the line to be run on the bridge, which it has its advantages, you know, in terms of, you know, being a, you know, more robust solution. Okay, but they're getting that. They wanted that. They made it clear they wanted that. They got it. Now they need to, you know, like, accept the fact that we, you know, conceded on that point and move it along.
Can you do that contractually?
Maybe
I
they
mean-
can tell us when they're gonna give us a meeting.
I mean, you know, I would do it by looking them in the eye and saying, look,
That
you
has
wanted
not
this,
worked.
you got, well, okay, I've never looked them in the eye, but it's to your point about like, wouldn't be so bad if someone from Pico, you know, met with some of the council leadership. So we could like, you know, express to them, you know, what's going on here.
I mean, should we delegate our borough solicitor to meet with them? Are we at that
We
point?
do have a Pico regional rep, so I could arrange a meeting for all of us to meet with the rep.
But we don't all
Discuss
need
it.
to meet with them, it's just.
Yeah, just a few of us though.
Have a
What's
conversation and say, look,
Yeah.
you know, this is what's going on. What can you do to move this along? Because.
You
know,
volunteering, Aaron?
I'd be happy to attend such a meeting.
I would also be happy to attend, both as mayor overseeing the police department that has to get back and forth between the two sides of the borough, and as a business owner who has experienced the dearth of traffic because people can't get to the borough. Yeah.
Do you have any concerns about this?
No.
Okay. All right. Let's set that up then. When we do it.
It doesn't, you know, it doesn't need to be like, it can be like a 10-minute phone call. I mean, it just doesn't need to turn into an elaborate process.
But I'd be happy to express so many of the difficulties we're experiencing due to the long-standing delay of this project.
But that hasn't worked. But like, this is really important.
Well, have we ever met with someone from Pico before?
No, but we've been paying Panoni, so.
Okay, well,
You know, I think I'm of the, like, A, you can account to the community, or B, how do we contractually put in here? You are held, you can't, that's what I'm asking, Michelle, you can't.
They're a lot bigger than we
I don't
are.
think, yeah, I don't.
Like with
We can
penalty?
put it in, but.
why would they do that?
I think we've got a path forward here. I'd like to try this. I think everybody acknowledges this is an unpleasant situation, but we've got to do our best to move this project forward, so.
Well, I guess, yeah, I mean, we have to do it, so. I still don't understand why they need to get motion.
All right, anything else for,
So in the packet, we do have a draft of the supplemental agreement. We can approve that at the next meeting, at the business meeting. That's okay?
Why, we can't approve it now?
It was listed for discussion.
yeah, it probably shouldn't be voted on in the final. It's a budget item, I mean,
Okay, but we should still proceed, you know.
yeah, you can tell them that.
Yeah.
We can tell them that we will approve it at our.
And PennDOT's a party to it, and they wanted to know your preference.
Okay, well.
Yeah.
So they said they had comments on this agreement.
Yeah, so they may have
They wanted to
changes they
know
want to
which-
make.
Okay, well, that's fine, but
Yeah.
just,
So in principle, we agree to that.
Okay, yeah.
And then
That's
when they
helpful.
have final, if they're gonna make changes, then we'll
okay.
take a look. All right. Thank you
Thank
for your
you.
time.
Thanks for being here, Jim.
Yeah, thank you.
We apologize for the technical difficulties.
Okay.
All right. Item 7B is the 201 Save Line RFP. So just to summarize where we are on this discussion, you know, we had our preliminary discussion on this last month. There's been some feedback from Wonder Spring and from council. So this is a revised version. And assuming that this discussion goes well, this will be something else that we can vote on at the business meeting to put out the RFP. Anybody have anybody have any questions at this point on the RFP? The draft RFP?
We did get an email from Wonder Spring
Yeah.
asking for some amendments.
Yeah, so they had two minor changes they proposed. Do you have that? Oh, I can find it.
Yeah, I can tell you what they are. They're really not changes for Wonder Spring in any way, shape, or form. These are actually things we've talked about and agreed upon, but these are clarifications that we should have put in here because they just make it more clear. So under project parameters on page 4, on bullet point 2, we describe this in general terms when we say the center has a recent history of successful participation in a similar multi-project project at the end. But what we should do is describe what that participation, make that a little more clear what that means. So before that, I would propose that we add a sentence that says, this lease will be fitted out to the center's specifications, including an outdoor playground for exclusive use by the current tenant, minimum 4,000 square feet. Because that it describes the kind of the project, or what their participation in the project would be like, that they would be fitting it, like saying what the fit out would be, and we didn't really say that. So I'd suggest we add that language to make it clear what we mean by participation, what their participation would be. And then there's also another bullet point on the next page that I think we should, something else we've talked about, that this project needs to allow for uninterrupted operation of the child care center. So I think we need to add a bullet point to the project parameters to say any development or demolition included in the proposal must allow for interrupted operations of the early childhood education center until the new building is completed and ready for occupancy. Because we did not put that in there.
And just in terms of the size, I took a look at their current playground, and it's bigger than what that 4,000 square feet. The current one is more like 7,000 square feet or something.
Yeah. A little bit more than needs to be.
So
they're putting the minimum, you know.
It's in keeping with what they've got right now. Yeah.
I think that's something for us. I mean, we can, yeah. I mean, we don't need to put the minimums. I mean, maybe we should.
Does anybody have any objection to any of that language being included?
No.
Okay.
I have a comment.
Go ahead.
So with the shared use underground, or the underground parking that it mentions, I really think it should be shared use for both the daycare and for the general public. And I'm wondering if we can incorporate that into the RFP.
I don't know. I would imagine the daycare would probably work out as a tenant of the building. The daycare would probably, might decide to work out some kind of use of that. They would have to work that into their lease. That would be between the daycare and whoever builds and owns the building. Public use, I don't know why.
I mean, we can suggest it as a possibility. I don't know how that would work exactly. I mean, underground parking is expensive, so that's going to put in a lot for the park as well.
Well, no, I mean, because the daycare it's only daytime use.
Yeah.
So I think for weekend and evening community events, it would be a good shared use.
But I don't think the daycare is probably going to use a lot of parking. Like, what they do is people either, well, for a lot of people walk there. Those who don't walk their kids there, they just sort of do a drive-through, drop off and pick up, right? Which is one reason why we sort of wanted the vehicles to sort of go through and not like go in and out onto Sabine like they do now, because that increases traffic on Sabine. But I mean, it's just a handful of employees, and I would imagine that they can accommodate them, that parking pretty easily. I don't think it'll be enough parking that it's going to free up like gobs of employee space at night.
I don't think we should get involved in public parking on that space. Because I think that's what you're asking for, right? For park.
Yeah, I mean, just considering that it's just a daytime use, and I just think that it would be a good opportunity for that to do shared use. But I would just want it to be considered.
I think it's something we could bring up during the process of, if we actually did, accept an RFP like during the process, then there might be enough parking already. There'd be some interest in even leasing some of the borough or something, but.
Michelle, do you have a sense of, in the site plan here, how big the park area would be in the new configuration, or is that left, there's some room for movement on that.
Acreage wise, I think it's probably like, because it's right, it's a 3.5 acre parcel. I think we've said, I think, well, the RFP specifies about an acre. Could be as much as an acre open for lease, that leaves 2.5 acres, right?
Right. So that's, and do we have a notion of how big the park is right now?
About 3/4 of an acre.
Okay, so you're talking about going from 3/4 of an acre to 2.5 acres. So that's, well, I mean,
We
it's
did
like.
pass a resolution that we had.
Okay, well, I'm sorry,
No,
I wasn't.
Underscore that math.
I wasn't necessarily
Yeah.
here at that point, but.
And one thing that the RFP left open, and I think this was more Barbara, something that Barbara's really advocated for a while, was to say, look, we all would also would possibly be open to permitting more than an acre, but only if the additional use was for like a community build, like an indoor community space. If you're gonna provide something like an indoor community space, like we might permit a little bit more than an acre, but that's the only thing I think that we would permit any kind of intrusion past what we've set aside. I mean, the rest of it, we've made a commitment that it's a park.
I mean, some of that
It
might
is.
have to be parking for the park, so, but it'll be,
Right, well, it's part of a park.
yeah.
Yeah.
And then, just one other quick question, if this is, if this information is available, there's been some discussion about how many Narberth families use the Wonder Spring, and I guess we got some clarification on that. Do you know what, does someone have
Yeah,
that
so I
information?
spoke to the daycare themselves, and someone said it was 23 out of 130 households that are from Narberth, that live in Narberth.
Okay.
So that provides more of a clear answer on that.
Well, that's their records.
Right.
So now that we have the corrected map of seeing this ingress egress, I was just curious, are those exact locations that are being recommended? Is that just a ballpark?
It's very much approximate. I
Okay.
probably should have the reference to I know, I mean, I don't even think we put them in a very good location, but I think it's to just show that the goal here is to get traffic to flow in one way and out the other way, out onto Montgomery Avenue.
And the parking, like Fred was saying, for park users, we
Figure that out.
can figure that out. That would be
Yeah, that's us.
on us, I
That'll
guess.
be on us.
But that's kind of what Jean was saying, maybe is.
Yeah, I just think it would be nice to have it, like, maximize our park space as much as possible, so
Right.
that we don't have to
Right.
use surface parking
Right.
on our park space. So if we can kind of cooperate with them to share some of that parking and accommodate some parking there, I think it might be a good opportunity for that.
Part of that may have to do with what Parks and Rec, what their master park plan looks like. If their master park plan looks like putting like a field for organized sports up here, which it might be a little tight and not a great shape for, to be honest with you. Because I think they've looked into some things like that. Like they were like baseball, there's no, they can't. Then, we really would probably need parking, right? Or if there were, I don't know, pickleball courts, because it's wildly popular and people
Well,
drive
I mean,
there.
for instance,
But if it was more just really a community park that wasn't, that we didn't have the kind of amenities that would draw people to it with their cars.
But let's say there was a community center there, for example,
Community center.
and there were some theater events or whatever, then it would bring some, some outside visitors.
But I don't think any of this is precluded at this point. Right.
No, that's,
I just want to say I appreciate looking at the description of everything. I appreciate the effort to remove a lot of the traffic from Sabine Avenue, the Sabine-Essex corridor, and move it out towards Montgomery Avenue. I think that's a really, for safety reason, it's a great part of this description.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's no question that Montgomery Avenue is better suited for.
Right, I think it's a more appropriate place for traffic flow, as opposed to the bottleneck that gets stuck there pretty often.
Okay.
I have
Go ahead.
so one more consideration, and it's kind of a big one. So I'm just wondering if it's possible to still make it an option to save that middle building. At least for the, I know it's moving backwards, but.
We were with you.
We did explore that. We really tried to look into that, and we looked into it with Heidi Boy. We looked into it with, our architect volunteers and.
The opinion was
I
that
still think we
it would be
could, but-
cheaper to like knock it down and build something entirely new there than to try to
So
save
I mean,
Nobody
I
said it
took
would be
a tour of the
He
building.
said it would be better value. That
better
was different
value.
from
Well,
cheaper.
okay,
Well,
maybe I'm
but the
wrong.
middle building is the building that has the worst infrastructure.
I don't think so.
No.
Basically, after listening to our experts,
Yeah.
and it was the opinion that it wasn't reasonable to do that in terms of cost. I mean, maybe if we'd gotten a pandemic grant and given us $3 million to do whatever we wanted to, it would have worked out. But for using our own money is not the answer.
This should be said.
Yeah,
I
so
don't think.
I don't
we
want to
should
go
be
into
aggressive.
discussion of that.
I very much agree with you,
Yeah.
and I still do. Yeah, I lost.
There's no way to just leave that open as an option for the developer.
I think we should forge ahead.
Well, I mean,
We'll be paralyzed.
but there does seem to be a desire to increase the open space, as I had asked, and having a building there doesn't necessarily.
I think, if we're talking about a community center, if we're talking about senior center.
Right, well, that's
yeah,
it.
it's a possibility, I think, but.
I think the expense of bringing it up to code was extraordinarily high. I think that
It
was-
doesn't have to come up to that code because it's a rehab building, but I don't want to go down that path again because I get my time and I gotta do it again now.
Right, I think the idea was that you might be able to not necessarily reuse it as like, it could be, you could use the shell of the building and make it, into
Right.
to sort of indoor, outdoor space. That might not require the code, but I don't know that we're gonna have to trade that off against the open space. That's the issue.
I think the current council decided against that, if we, so I think that's where we stand. Would rather not reopen that discussion at this time. Okay.
I do have a couple of residents that have their hands raised. You want to take questions or comments?
Yeah, we typically don't take questions or comments during the middle of the meeting. Unless it's a procedural issue and they can't hear us or something.
Yeah, we're not voting on this tonight.
Yeah, this is not a vote. Let me reemphasize that we will be discussing this for the vote in 2 weeks. So if you'd like to make a public comment at the meeting at that time, or if you'd like to email us, but we're not going to reopen public comment in the middle of the meeting at this time. So, and however, to respond to some of the questions that we did have. So 650 Montgomery, which is the new construction that's going in at the Albrechts, they already have a child care tenant that is going to be taking up most of their ground floor space, or a large proportion of it. They've already sold most of their space, or rented, I guess, most of their space. So it's a good idea, but they already have the tenant. As for reaching out to the community, this is the outgrowth of that community process that we had. Was that 2 years ago, 3 years ago? Yeah. So this is. It takes a while for council to move on certain decisions. This is one that's taken a while. So we view the RFP as the one of the end results of that process. So we're down to 2 potential options for the property. The RFP is going to be one of the ways that we get information about whether the option of new construction is viable. So that's where we are right now. And also, putting out the RFP does not commit us to any project. We're going to receive proposals, and at that point we will look them over. We have no obligation to accept any of them. So we're just going to see what's on the table at that point, and make our decision then. And we will be, soliciting community opinion once we reach that point of seeing proposal. Yeah, I mean, we haven't talked about this, but at that point, once we have concrete proposals on the table, that'll be another point where we definitely will want the community's feedback. Once these, once the proposals are submitted to us.
I mean, I would imagine, assuming we get proposals,
Yeah.
assuming we get reasonable proposals.
Yeah, I mean, it's possible we'll
it's
possible we'll get nothing and we'll reject everything out of hand.
But assuming we get some reasonable proposals, I think we would probably ask those folks to present publicly.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Thanks, folks.
Bye.
Bedtime.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, any other comments on this RFP? All right, so we need dates. Are we just going to, I mean, for the actual RFP, I would have no problem asking our partners to propose the dates. Do we need to come up with these dates?
No, I don't think so. We just, the business meeting on May 18th, that'd be approving the RFP. And we can just go from there. I'd have to talk it over with John Walco.
Yeah, either John, well, I'm just saying to get the dates, can we ask the RDA for suggestions and just
Yeah, I could do
fill
that.
in what they're recommending?
Yeah.
Because I don't have a strong opinion about the timeline of this RDA.
Okay.
Are there any other decision points for council on the draft that we need to figure out at this time, Alan, that you can think of?
No.
Okay. So, assuming there's no other comments, this will be on the agenda at the business meeting for us to approve, along with the changes that Michelle suggested, and the timeline, hopefully, from the RDA. And we're going to fill in those X's. Okay, let's move on to committee reports. Infrastructure, your report?
Yep, brief. So we discussed the baseball field netting, and we had deferred a decision on that at last year's budget time last year, and we're going to defer it till the budget discussion at the end of this year. There was a concern raised by Parks and Rec about liability, but we did check with the insurer, and we don't really have a liability issue. The borough doesn't have a liability issue there. Okay, as part of the plans to have to allow people to reserve spaces at the parks, for events, so they don't have to, get there at like 7 o'clock in the morning and stake out the picnic tables. We agreed to buy, and we approved the budget to add some tables to both parks, and I believe those have been ordered.
Yeah, Jeff ordered them. Mm-hmm.
Right. Okay. I'll skip the update on the bridge. Do we have for Narberth Day, do we have a tour of 3 Elmwood planned? Is that?
Yeah, we're going to have a tour of, I'm going to give a tour of 3 Elmwood and one of the stormwater bump outs.
Good. And then the 100 Conway improvements, the HVAC updates are on track, and even though the last piece doesn't arrive till the end of this month, even if it gets hot in May, what has been done already will improve the situation.
Also, our technician is finishing up the thermostat devices in each of the rooms, so you can see one was just added here.
Okay, sorry.
So he's wired everything, and he's finishing that up as we speak.
Did the improvements include the police station? Because that was getting very hot too.
Yes, that was part of it too.
Okay.
So does that mean we want you to close down the office for heat?
Yes.
It should be. All right, good. So,
Luckily, it's been pretty cool.
luckily.
Yeah.
In some ways, I guess.
Yeah.
Okay. Moving on, the sidewalk inspection program should be starting soon. They're gonna start slow, just, see if there are any issues with it. I think they were gonna do some of the borough-owned properties first, is that right, Alan?
Yeah, that was the idea. Start
Yeah.
slow and then go from there.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, there was a discussion, about the 80 Windsor, the East Wing Sidewalk project. We have an estimate that's within the budget, but suggestion was made about widening that path to accommodate bikes. Maybe Chief, you could explain.
Actually,
Yeah, so
actually,
he had an update.
Okay, go ahead.
yeah. So it was what you were thinking. So the new sidewalk would be actually 6 feet wide.
Okay.
And it would be like slightly like curved, heading towards the rear, which was I think what everybody had wanted for the sidewalk.
So it already is a multimodal path.
Yes. So I didn't know that at the infrastructure committee meeting, but I checked with Jeff and he showed me the proposal and that was all factored in. So I gave him the go ahead to proceed.
That's great. That's
Okay.
exactly right. Yeah,
Yeah.
Jeff was at training the day of the infrastructure
So it's
meeting.
6 feet wide?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, great.
Well, just a quick note that a multi-use path is actually a bit wider than that, so I don't know if there's any room in there to widen that further. But
This is
I
just,
think I'm okay with 6 feet too.
this is just the ramp leading to the,
This is around the.
Around the building.
Building,
To
to the
the
parking lot.
yeah. It's like to the left of the
okay, yeah, so where the bell is,
Mhm.
well, okay.
And then finally, the west wing roof.
But you know what, there's actually a time capsule under there, so you gotta make sure that we're not
I hope it's already.
destroying it or what, I guess they could take it out early, but they should be aware that there's a time capsule in there. It's like to be open next year, so, I think.
The west wing roof project is moving on to the next phase of design, and they've been coordinating pretty closely with the occupants of both spaces, because the way it's going to be constructed, there may be some of the cabinets that have to move around, and the staff will coordinate with them.
Is that when the library's shutting down either next week?
I find that hard to believe because this is just in design.
Okay.
So, and do we know if any update on approaching the Elmwood to Elmwood owner?
No, I still have to do that. I'm sorry.
It's all good.
Yeah.
Man. I mean, I should just say that, like, Alan, has a lot of work to do, and we appreciate his all his efforts in keeping this. I didn't mean that to be to.
No, it's okay.
That's for the
Checking in.
streams, that's for the retaining wall.
Well, you discovered the problem in the retaining wall. Okay, great, and that's it.
And then we have that, you mentioned it, the agreement to reserve those tables, that's ready to roll out, right?
It is.
Okay, so if you folks out there, if you want to reserve a space at the parks, how should you go about it? What should they do, call the office or?
So the application will be on the website. They submit it just as they do for other applications through IGO.
Okay.
Along with the fee, and that can be paid online, and then our staff would review it and let them know if we have any concerns. It's a pretty straightforward process.
All right.
And
So
what's the fee?
It is $20 for residents and $30 for non-residents.
And, it's not that big a change in the sense that if you want to go there at 7 o'clock in the morning and stake out the table, go for it. But if you want to not do that, you
Buying
can,
a fast pass.
yeah, exactly. So, I mean, it's not a major change in that sense because it's not like they're going to throw you, they wouldn't let you use it if no one else was using it, so.
Oh, also, we are going to be purchasing reserved signage, so we can place at any facility and list the times and dates that it's reserved to cut down the number of potential arguments that could.
Yeah, squad.
Yeah.
facilities would just stay up all the time and they would list.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Well, that'll let people know that they can reserve them. Okay.
Yeah, that's probably the best advertising of all.
Seriously.
Yeah. Well, are you gonna put one at every picnic table? That's a little.
Okay, well,
Okay, we'll figure it out.
Yes.
Yeah.
I just want to ask about 3 Elmwood. Is that going to be under Parks and Rec to develop the park master plan?
that's in
Is that the idea?
that process. Yeah.
So, but short-term
Short-term, we'll have to make some decisions. I think Jeff was going to, I've talked to him about it. You know, they've done the initial cleanup, and then it's going to be kind of up to council what happens next. So I don't know if he's planning to like present anything to us, or what would be the best way to go about that.
I think all Jeff was doing was just doing his cleanup work and then allowing council to proceed afterwards.
Yeah.
And his idea was to kind of make it safe for pedestrians and try to start to get rid of all the invasive species that's there, just clear it out, and then pretty much let council take it from there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which bridges over to the fungi, fungi.
All right. So maybe we'll ask Parks and Rec for if they have any short-term.
Well, they have a meeting next week, so that would be, that would be good.
Yeah,
But,
the
Conservancy should be involved. They should-
That's in the long term, yeah. So if we're going to do plantings and all that, I think the Conservancy and Shade Tree want to be involved. So
okay,
right now, let's get a.
But one question that came up is, should we post any signs there, you know, like saying like open, like daylight hours or something? Because let's just say they may have found some beer cans there during the cleanup.
Yeah, open dawn to dusk. I mean, it's the same hours as the other parks, right?
Right, but it's not posted, is all I'm saying. Is that?
Yeah.
We
Somebody.
Well, we could post maybe something that's like not permanent, because I think after we do our plan, that will probably.
It's all changed. I'm just saying for right now, just saying it dawn to dusk, just.
Okay.
Someone texted me pictures of geese and said geese at our new Wynwood Road Park. So it must be being used by the public. So if we want to regulate that, yeah, by geese, that's for sure.
I'm not going to kick the geese out of dusk.
No, that's John's problem.
Okay.
We'll have the police patrol the area regularly.
I suspect there won't be beer now that it's all over.
Well, yeah, now that you can see what's going on.
Well, that's what Jeff said. He said, you know, they wanted to clear it out because as it was, you could like hide in there.
Yeah, it's great.
Yeah.
So now you can't do that.
I mean, we probably will eventually want to screen from the highway, but I mean, for the short term, everything was choked by vines. It was really in poor shape. Things were over the sidewalk. All right. Any other? Let's move on to F&A.
So I think I talked about this at the business meeting, but we've asked the Narberth Planning Commission to review the intensity ordinance or the dispersion ordinance and to recommend a distance between the identified businesses. They had a pretty lengthy discussion last meeting. One took some time to say, okay, 5A is different than 5B. What should that look like? I've asked for those recommendations by their next meeting, so I could have it before you all in May and June. So look forward to that. Website redesign status update. Alan has experience in this. He was in charge of redoing their webpage at his former position, and he commissioned PSAB to do the webpage. So he is going to look into that.
Yep. PSAB did North Wales Borough's website. I'm very proud of it. It took like about 2 months to redo it, but I think it's pretty user friendly. And PSAB's, their rates are really modest for helping boroughs, and they actually build in, or they schedule in block time each year to do like basically an inventory of our website, and they come up with suggestions, and they build in hours to like do those updates for us as part of like a contract. And right now we're the only ones that manage the website. We don't have like an IT administrator for the website, so we would add that as if we went under contract with them. So I just have to get a price.
Yep, so Ira and I were at that meeting and we both thought that is fabulous.
Yeah.
Just please do that when you have the time to manage that. So like we said,
Let's get some more details on that.
On the price, yeah, but.
I think our last plan was to get the intern we had last summer to do it.
That did not work. I think if we have a model that works with someone who coordinated it, we should go with, we'll get that person come back. Again.
Can we take a look at what that agreement looks like? And the
sure. We're not going to vote on it without seeing it.
Yeah.
Right, but they can just make it more like easier to find things.
Yeah.
But I think you've already done some stuff.
I'm starting to do some cleanup work on the website.
Yeah.
Like I cut down on the news feed because it was way too long. It was like scrolling.
Yeah.
And that kind of defeats the purpose. You know, if you're posting the same information, people are going to stop looking at it. So I'm trying to cut out old stuff that's not really relevant anymore and keep it fresh. And making sure that all our links and everything work, and making sure if we're missing something, I can add it. So
Great, thank you.
Yes, I mean, Alan said, yeah, Missy and I have said, this really is not user friendly. It's really stagnant. So I think Ira and I confidently said, we're gonna trust you to do this. The reoccurring park user status update is that, again, we're not even gonna look at this until Borough Manager is seated. The recurring users that F&A had begun to inquire about, those seasons have all started. So we can pivot that till next year and a new manager to think about and answer questions about like netting and financial responsibility. That doesn't have to happen now. The Friends of Narberth Green initiatives, the 5093 was created, and we actually just got an email from John that we got the number, the EIN number. So we are ready to go as soon as we seat the 5 board members and we transfer. I have potentially 5 folks. I have 4 folks and 1 inquiry, but I'd like to almost wait until after Earth Day because I was going to print up flyers. We could put it at the Borough. I attended the EAC meeting yesterday and have talked to a couple of residents just saying I kind of want to understand what this is. So to reiterate, we have a neighbor that has given a very generous donation of $10,000 to be earmarked for 3 Elmwood for greening pathways. I don't want to take their words, but a pretty specific donation. The person wishes to remain anonymous. Somebody else came forward and said, I didn't realize that was an option to give money to open green space. So as I explained to the EAC, this is not duplicative in that this group is not making decisions about open green space. It's not making decisions about environmental design. Rather, they're kind of the financial shell and the stewards of private funds that want to be used for the public good that we didn't have. This makes it clear and transparent. So because this isn't a volunteer form per se, like we have, this isn't a board or commission. Are we comfortable? I mean, we could seat more than 5 board members if we wanted to. This was just what John recommended. I mean, are we comfortable with whoever comes forward? We could say, you're the 5 appointed, you're the auxiliary members or something, and we could have that hopefully by next meeting. Because we need the board members to open up the bank account and transfer this.
So
I will tell you the donors.
We would appoint people at the meeting, despite it not being a board or commission, like we're still appointing as council.
Well, it's a nonprofit board. It's not a governmental board.
Kind of,
So what,
it's,
Like, you don't need to, how does any nonprofit board
come together?
first
Yeah.
get appointed?
Let's get John to tell us the proper procedure.
Well, I think the procedure would be, we would appoint them. I'm just saying the volunteer application that we have isn't really applicable for this.
It's not.
You know what I mean? Like, so if you, to have them fill the
Yeah, I agree.
application, think how many council meetings you've gone to is.
No, I agree.
But if we have more than 5, if we have more than the number of people who apply, I think we
Okay, I'll
want to have
ask
something. I mean, they don't have to fill out the app. You know, if we end up having more volunteers than spaces, then we'll need to have some sort of judgment. So we would need some sort of written description
What's
probably.
the minimum donation to get a board seat?
Well, there we go. I will tell you,
The Fonzie Gala.
you know, you laugh, but it sounds fun now that you said that. Our initial generous donor is very eager. And to quote this person, they said, I'm old, I'm ready to give you this money. So
Okay.
I would like to expedite this to respect this.
I think we can do this at our next meeting.
Okay, perfect. Let's
Make
set
it
that
part of
on
the
the
next
agenda
meeting.
then, please. Appointment. We also discussed the communication policy, which we talked about last week. Borough staff is going to post the agenda for council meetings on the webpage and social media before each committee meeting and council meeting. We all as chairs are going to put anything on our agenda that the public may want to know about, which will be a unique social media and flash. And Alan, you and I have to meet, and Jean, if you can help, we're going to create those signs, like the Shade Tree Commission of the hey, something's about to happen here. Transfer to Borough accounts to Pliget are completed. Narberth Farmers Market update. We have everything in check regarding Walco and indemnifying the borough. And it sounds like the organizers and the farmer met today with Jeff Eldon, but Alan, you and I don't have any feedback on that yet because it was the end of the day.
That was like 4 o'clock when they met, yeah.
Okay. But the idea is Thursdays 3 to 7 at Station Circle.
Where's
it gonna be located?
Station Circle. If it's going to be regular, I think Council, or Chief, did you have something you want to do?
No.
Okay, so if once we have this all down, I think Council should approve this if it's going to be a regular occurrence,
Right.
especially if it's on borough property. So
Yeah, we just need the details.
Yep.
From yesterday.
So
Or
hopefully
today.
Yeah,
possibly in 2 weeks.
Yep. That's all.
All right. Public health and safety.
Yeah, so we are meeting a week from Friday at 9 o'clock, and the traffic engineer has submitted a report.
Yep, we received it today.
It came in today on Iona. So we'll be able to look at that in the meeting. And I know several residents are very interested, and so they'll probably want to attend. So we recommended John String to be our emergency management coordinator, much like our previous chief took on that role. And we thank John for being willing.
Thank you.
And I think Alan's going to pursue that process, the formal process with the state. So I don't know if we need to be involved.
Council, I think we need to designate somebody, right?
You have to do it by resolution.
Yeah.
So we'll have to put that on a future agenda.
Sure.
I can try and get that for the business meeting.
Sounds good. You
Yeah,
can put it in the
okay.
consent agenda.
Okay.
Okay, and let's see. We are looking at the solid waste ordinance. We have flagged several sections for discussion. We're going to continue that discussion in May. And then we also have moved up our agenda this mobile food vendor regulation discussion, which has been at the bottom of our list, but we're going to try to address it before the summer.
Yeah.
Food trucks, what's the issue?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Mr. Salty.
So what is the general proposal?
Well, we're looking at an ordinance from other places.
Norristown had
Norristown.
an expensive food truck
There,
regulation.
it's about food health permits and business taxes and all those questions.
Regulated hours.
Yeah, nuisance
Noise.
ordinances related to something.
Which this may be the second most divisive issue in Narberth.
I know.
Just when the parklets, you name them streeteries and people love them. And Mr.
You're asking me to vote against Mr. Softy?
Yeah.
It's gonna be tough.
Well,
It's
My
not
daughter,
just-
my daughter heard about this.
she could just like turn it.
It's the volume.
She'd never speak to me.
I can tell you as mayor, I am fielding complaints from a number of people who are trying to get their kids to sleep at night or there's been various
It's a little loud.
issues with noise.
But yeah, no, the
Don't
neighbor said I'm
we
calling
already have a
911.
noise ordinance that would trigger, or?
I think it's smart to have, a lot of places have food truck regulations. We're not singular in this.
And it's not just that. I mean, think about like when we have events in parks and we're bringing food trucks, we should know who has combustible trucks and how closely they're parked to structures. I mean, there should be some broader regulations, but.
Yeah, so we're going to look at that, and also the plastics ordinance update. John Walker is working on that with the committee to kind of figure out some language that EAC recommended, including styrofoam takeout containers. So we're looking at that, and that seems to be in line with what several communities have done. So we will make a recommendation on that soon.
Just a quick heads up, probably more for Alan. Our trash contract is up at the end of this year.
Mm-hmm.
So
That's why we're partially, we're discussing
Solid
the
waste
solid waste
ordinance.
ordinance.
okay, good.
Yeah.
Just want to make sure.
Yeah.
you do that.
Hopefully we'll be able to do better than our current one.
Yeah, the EAC, I think, sent a memo to the committee that we can look at with recommendations for the next contract.
Ira, did you have a question?
That was my story.
All right, great. Any other? Okay, any announcements for the good of council? All right, so we will have an executive session after this meeting where we will discuss disposition of borough-owned property at 230 Haverford, a potential matter of litigation, and a personnel matter. We probably will not return to session afterwards.
No.
So I'll take a motion to adjourn.
Moved.
Second?
Second.
All right, we're voting to adjourn. All those in favor? Can't see Barbara, but I'm going to see her.
She's there. Yeah,
There,
she-
I see it now. All right.
Hi, Barb.
Hi, Barbara. All right, we are adjourned. What's that? Thank you, everyone.